So here we go again, part 2 of the history of 617 Squadron, Royal Air Force. We might have called the first episode after the motto of 617 Squadron, Après moi le déluge, after me the flood. That means that part 2 might be called Après moi le grand chelem. The famous Dambusters raid saw the Ada Dam breached and destroyed, and the Mona Dam breached and destroyed. But 6 dams were targeted, 4 dams were attacked, 2 dams burst. That's a mission success rate of 33%. 133 aircrew took part in Operation Chastise. 56 of these were casualties, most of whom were killed, some were captured. 42% casualty rate. Was it worth it, was the question that many people in the Royal Air Force asked after the attacks had gone in. The morale effect of the Dambusters was stupendous, and certainly, as far as the country was concerned, it was well worth the raid. Air Chief Marshal Portal definitely thought that the raid had been worthwhile, but Air Marshal Harris definitely thought it had not, and kept this view right until the end of the war. The publicity certainly squashes any impact of the Butt report, with most people now believing that the RAF can almost perform miracles, and Guy Gibson becomes a heartthrob. But Gibson never flies with 617 Squadron again. He is awarded the Victoria Cross and travels with Winston Churchill, Earl Mountbatten and several other dignitaries across the Atlantic, first to visit Canada and then to visit the United States. He's declared a national hero who is considered TVTR, too valuable to be risked. He goes on a publicity mission to the USA before flying his final mission. Barnes-Wallis's bouncing bombs continue to be investigated as an anti-shipping weapon. The highball, including the idea of a Mosquito carrying 2 highballs to the target, but there is no record of the highball or the bouncing bomb ever being used again. In fact, the Germans were more likely to use it, as they tested a rocket-powered standoff version of the bouncing bomb, but this also never achieved anything. 617 Dambusters Squadron flies on. They continue to fly specialist precision strikes, but under other commanders and not from RAF Scampton. Après moi le déluge, après moi le grand chelem. 617 Squadron flew their final mission from Scampton, taking off led by Squadron Leader Holden on a raid to bomb Italian power stations in northern Italy, and the squadron flew across the Mediterranean to land in North Africa. In August 1943, 617 Squadron flew back to the RAF Conisbee and were then stationed on the satellite station of Woodall Spa. Operation Garlic was their next raid. This was an attack on the Dortmund-Ems Canal. It was carried out on the 14th and 16th of September 1943. The attack had to be carried out at low level. 617 Squadron were now considered to be low-level experts, but the defences at the target were strong and the conditions were difficult. The operation was unsuccessful. The canal was not significantly damaged, but what was worse, 617 Squadron lost 5 of the 8 aircraft involved in the raid. Casualties included the new squadron leader, George Holden, and also several of the original Dambuster crews. 617's morale was badly hit. "617's successful navigation across Italy to Africa led to a plan to bomb and presumably kill Mussolini at his Italian mountain retreat. But he was thrown out of office before the plan could be implemented. With such a famous pedigree, it became difficult to find missions that would justify risking such a famous and popular squadron. But of the 19 pilots who survived Operation Chastise, the bombing of the dams, only 5 remained, and morale really began to droop. Group Captain Leonard Cheshire had flown a full tour of duty and has written a bestseller book called Bomber Pilot. Cocky Cochrane, commanding officer for 5 Group, persuades Cheshire to take command of 617 Squadron. It wasn't an easy task. Cheshire was a Halifax pilot, and he had last been commanding a heavy bomber conversion unit. This was a non-operational unit. Firstly, he would have to convert to the Lancaster. Cheshire had been turned down as a Pathfinder squadron leader, but when an attack was planned on dangerous German cross-channel V3 superguns, he came up with a plan that Cochrane approved in principle. The superguns were intended to fire from northern France and reach all the way across to the town centre of London, causing considerable damage to morale. The guns were buried deep into a hillside, permanently aimed at London. Multiple charges along the massive gun barrel propelled the heavy shell so that it could actually reach London. And the site was heavily defended by anti-aircraft guns, making low-level bombing impossible. But the attack must be made with pinpoint accuracy. For some time, Cheshire had been developing a precision bombing technique for the Lancaster, which was essentially a night area bomber. He proposed it to Cochrane for an attack on the V3 guns, where very exact bombing would be required, with Barnes-Wallis's earthquake bombs. Cochrane put the proposition to Air Marshal Harris, Commander-in-Chief of Bomber Command, and Harris required a test mission for the technique. This was scheduled to attack the armament factory at Limoges. The factory had a 24-hour shift with French workers and was surrounded by civilian houses. These factors had prevented a conventional bombing attack. Bomber Harris set a severe set of conditions for the attack. Destroy the targets with minimum damage to surrounding property and no casualties among the French civilian workers. No casualties among the workers was a difficult task to fulfill. Firstly, a Lancaster flew at very low level to warn the workers that the attack was coming so that they could leave the factory. Bye! Then in came a low-level Lancaster to drop an illuminating flare onto which the rest of the squadron bombed. Photo reconnaissance showed that the target had been completely destroyed. The raid was a complete success. However, information from the French resistance confirmed that the V3 superguns were not yet installed, so the raid was postponed indefinitely. But Cheshire still wanted his target marker bombing to be more widely used and accepted. He was allocated a Mosquito to continue target marking. The Mosquito was on loan to target mark a raid against the aircraft factories at Toulouse. Mosquitoes were starting to fly with the Pathfinders and were considered the ideal low-level stooge at speed over the target area while swooping in from time to time to drop marker flares. .617's proposed use of a Mosquito was so important and unique that the aircraft designer, Geoffrey de Havilland, travelled up to Woodhall Spa in person to supervise the Mosquito's preparation and stayed there until the squadron had returned from the mission. The Mosquito overflew the target and dropped a target marker. A single Lancaster then flew in and bombed onto that marker. The process was repeated, with aircraft flying in signally, bombing on Cheshire's instructions. Until the squadron had completely destroyed the target factory. Photo reconnaissance showed the attack was a total success. Cheshire led 617 Squadron on several marked raids, with him flying the more manoeuvrable Mosquito and the squadron flying over individually, dropping their bombs to Cheshire's instructions. This meant breaking radio silence over the target area, usually a big no-no with bomber command, but it also meant each bomb was made to count, and 617 Squadron was becoming something of a law to itself. This method led to a series of attacks with astonishing accuracy, destroying the aircraft factory at Albert on the 2nd of March, the needle bearing factory at Saint-Étienne on the 4th of March, the Michelin plant at Clermont-Ferrand on the 16th of March, the Tuileries power station at Bergerac on the 18th of March, and 2 attacks on power stations at Lyon on the 25th and the 27th of March. A version of Cheshire's low-level target marking technique was then put to use in a series of devastating raids against Saint-Cyr-l'École, on the 10th of April 1944, Air Marshalling Yard on the 18th and 19th of April. This incidentally was the first raid that Bill Reed VC flew with 617 Squadron. You might remember him from RAF Sqdr. And a daylight attack on the submarine pens at La Rochelle. Next, Air Marshal Harris, Commander-in-Chief of Bomber Command, sets Cheshire's method a real test. To mark Munich's marshalling yard for a bombing raid during a heavier area bombing raid carried out by Bomber Command. Munich was heavily defended and lay at the extreme range of the 4 Mosquito aircraft being used as target markers. They will only have 5 minutes of loiter time over the target and will only have 15 minutes of fuel left when they get home, providing all goes well. They would have to fly a direct route, being unable to avoid dense flak areas, and would have to rendezvous exactly with the bomber stream. Navigation on this attack will have to be perfect. The round trip would be something like 1,700 miles, and the Mosquito's range could be extended to 1,800 miles with drop tanks and careful flying. But most of the Mosquito crews expected to end up as prisoners of war, or worse. When Cheshire arrived, the Pathfinder Lancasters were already dropping flares for the main bomber stream to bomb onto around the city itself. Cheshire dived his Mosquito straight onto 617's pinpoint railway target and illuminated it with phosphor flares. .617's Mosquitoes flew several target marking passes and ensured the target was destroyed before heading for home. But the raid was a total success and all 4 Mosquitoes made it back to base. Harris agreed that 617 Squadron should have a half-dozen Mosquitoes assigned permanently to the squadron. The Mosquitoes should be used for specific target marking, that 617 Squadron should do its own target marking and not be tied to the Pathfinder squadrons, and in fact 2 squadrons of Pathfinders would shortly join 5 Group to work with 617 Squadron. .617 continued to fly ultra-low-level target illumination missions over Germany in their Mosquitoes, and on occasions they flew bomber Pathfinder missions in their Lancasters to lead the bomber stream onto the target. The United States Army Air Force 8th Air Force, the mighty 8th, whose reason for being was simply precision bombing in daylight over Germany, was so impressed by Cheshire's precision attacks at night that they sent him the personal gift of a P-51 Mustang long-range fighter. .617 was tasked to bomb the V1 storage depot in France, and Cheshire immediately decided to use his new present as a target marker on the raid. The Mustang performed the role beautifully and became part of 617's arsenal of weapons for the future. For D-Day, 617 had a special role. They flew Operation Taxable, which was successive waves of spoof missions above the Channel approaching the Pas-de-Calais. 617 was dropping window chaff, which is small pieces of aluminium foil, to simulate an invasion in the Calais area on German radar, and thereby pinning the German defences in the wrong place, whilst the invasion actually took place in Normandy. For many of its recent raids, 617 Squadron had reunited with Barnes-Wallis, whose Earthquake Tallboy bomb is ideal for precision raids on protected and difficult to hit targets. These bombs can penetrate deep down into an underground position and explode inside the armoured protection. 617 had used the bombs to attack U-boat pens at La Rochelle. The Tallboy bombs were now to be used on the delayed raid on the V3 sites at Mimo-Yequeurs. Barnes-Wallis's bomb is ideal to penetrate deep down to an underground gun position. On the raid itself, Cheshire comes in to mark the target with his flares, and the high-level bombers come in, dropping the Tallboy bombs to penetrate into the target area and blow it to Kingdom Come. The overflight from a reconnaissance aircraft shows the target is totally destroyed. As well as firing Pathfinder and spoof missions, 617 Squadron also pioneered a few missions as a detached squadron. And they made 2 long-range attacks, one from Russia and one from northern Scotland, to bomb the German battleship Tirpitz with Wallis's Tallboys. On the second attack, along with 9 Squadron, they hit the Tirpitz with 3 Tallboy bombs, and she capsized. One of the bombs did miss by something like 1.7 kilometers from the target. The hole can still be seen and is known to this day as 617's golf course. Then Guy Gibson returns to the scene. After a full year on the ground, Guy Gibson is now the Base Air Staff Officer, a desk job for 5 Group stationed at East Kirby. It appears that he has sneaked on to several operational flights as an observer against the expressed orders of the Prime Minister. Finally, he persuades Harris and Portal to let him fly a Mosquito as bomber leader on a Conisbee wing raid against triple targets. The raid includes some 617 Squadron aircraft. Gibson insists on taking a Mosquito that has been allocated to another crew, and he generally makes a nuisance of himself before the raid. This is put down to a suggestion of nerves. Gibson has never flown a Mosquito on operations. He has never flown as a bomber leader, and nor had his navigator. The raid is trying a new dispersed marking technique, and the crews are not happy that Gibson has been brought in as bomber leader with no experience of the job. But the raid seems to be a success. but Gibson does not return. The erstwhile hero of 617 Squadron was dead. The squadron continued to fly low-level strike missions and high-level precision missions in the Lancaster B-3, designed by Chadwick, using bombs and ordnance designed by Barnes-Wallis. Near the end of the war, Wallis's £22,000 10-ton Grand Slam earthquake bomb is dropped by 617 Squadron to destroy the vital Bielefeld viaduct. There were 8 more attacks on viaducts and underground strongpoints, with 617 Squadron and 9 Squadron dropping £10,000 tall boys and £22,000 Grand Slam earthquake bombs, and this gave them the new name of the Bridge Busters. It was attacking one of the underground strongpoints being used to store V-weapons that Bill Reed VC, again from the RAF Sqdr program, was hit by a tallboy bomb dropped from a 617 Squadron aircraft flying above, and was forced to bail out with his crew. Such accidents were quite common, particularly in night attacks where several hundred bombers reached the target at about the same time. And in one of their last attacks of the war, 617 Squadron bombed and sank the German pocket battleship Lützow in dock at Swinemundum, using the heavyweight Grand Slam bombs. Après moi, le Grand Chelem, after me, the Grand Slam. There is an irony in the relationship between 617 Squadron and its oldest friend and benefactor, Barnes-Wallis. The weapon that Wallis had designed to sink a ship actually burst the dams, and the weapon that Wallis thought might burst the dams actually sank the ships. Leonard Cheshire did win the Victoria Cross. Unusually, this was not for a single exploit, but for an entire war of brave and exemplary service, a very unusual award of the Victoria Cross. He was then official observer with Professor William Penny at the Nagasaki atomic bombing attack by the United States Air Force. This might have led to his great peacetime achievement, the Cheshire Foundation. Geoffrey Leonard Cheshire, Baron Cheshire, VC, OM, DSO and 2 bars, DFC. In a squadron that had a small multitude of heroes serving in its ranks, Group Captain Geoffrey Leonard Cheshire, Baron Cheshire, Victoria Cross, Order of Merit, Distinguished Service Order and 2 bars, and Distinguished Flying Cross, was probably among the most noteworthy of heroes in all of the heroes of the war. But the squadron moved on into the 21st century via the atomic age. And that has now become part 3 of what is becoming an epic. However, it is an epic story, and I particularly wanted us to know the story of Leonard Cheshire's war. I met him when I was a child and he became something of a childhood hero. Part 3 is in the same place on YouTube. Muskham History Group, 617 Squadron, Part 3. Bye now.